Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of World Connect, your weekly window to the world. In the next half an hour, we'll get you the top stories the world over. I'm Sakal Bhatt and let's start the ball rolling with the focus of the World Connect this week. Soccer world in tears as a deadly Lamia plane crash kills most of the Chapecoense team that was headed to play the biggest match of its career. Brazil pays tribute to the fallen players as investigators probe the crash. US President-elect Donald Trump nominates retired Marine Corps General James Mattis to lead Pentagon. Popular by the name Mad Dog, Mattis is known for some real tough talk and battlefield experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. Italy goes to vote on a constitutional referendum. A win for Renzi is set to boost Italy's long stagnant economy, and a no would mean he would be forced to step down. UNESCO's Intangible Heritage Representative list is out, while yoga features prominently in the list. China's 24 solar terms, Cuban Rumba and Ukraine's Cossacks also make it to the coveted list. Well, right at the moment, when Atletico Nacional was to face their Chapecoense counterparts in the Copa Sudamericana final, they were mourning one of the biggest blows to the soccer world. The Lamia flight with Chapecoense team on board crashed as it approached towards Medellin in Colombia. The crash killed nearly most of the team, leaving soccer-mad Brazil in tears. With reports claiming that the flight ran short on fuel, probe is on to get into the details of the crash.
It was a usual pre-takeoff scene as Chapecoense players settled on board Lamia plane on Monday. They were headed to Colombia for the final of the Copa Sudamericana, the biggest game in the club's history. Everything appeared well in place and they were all upbeat for the clash they had been waiting for long. Images of the team and crew members on board the ill-fated plane prior to the takeoff showed them gearing up for the flight.
Chegar a essa final. We
are very proud to represent Brazil and to reach this final, mainly because we represent a team considered medium or small in Brazil, and that strengthens us more. Being taken by Lamia makes it all right.
But what appeared all right did not end as expected. The team started its journey only to meet a tragic end. The plane, operated by Bolivian-based charter airline Lamia, took off from Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia to Medellin in Colombia. It lost contact with ground controllers on Monday evening after the pilot reported an electrical fault. Images from a flight tracker show the flight circling several times just outside of Medellin. The plane crashed minutes after 10 p.m. while approaching towards Medellin. 19 players and coaching staff were among the 71 who died. The victims also included around 20 journalists on the way to cover the match, while the crew members were from Bolivia. Of the 6 survivors, 3 were players. Goalkeeper Jackson Follman was recovering from the amputation of his right leg. Defender Helio Neto remained in intensive care with severe trauma to his skull and lungs. Fellow defender Alan Russell had spinal surgery. It was a bitter twist to a fairy tale story for Chapecoense. Since 2009, the team rose from Brazil's 4th to top division. It was like a Cinderella story for a team of unlikely champions, which has a devoted national fan base in Brazil. The mishap sent shockwaves to the soccer world across the globe, with millions across Brazil left heartbroken. Brazil declared 3 days of mourning. Thousands of soccer fans in the Brazilian city of Chapeco filled the Chapecoense stadium in a moving vigil to the victims on Wednesday. With the stadium bathed in the club's green and white colors, some fans were joined by friends and family of the soccer players killed in the tragedy. In Colombia, Atletico Nacional, which was to take on their fallen rivals, instead held a ceremony in honor of the Chapecoense players. At the moment when they were set to take the field as foes, 2 soccer teams a continent apart raised their voices in unison on Wednesday. The probe is underway to investigate the crash. The black box of the plane has already been recovered. According to reports, the plane was running out of fuel and the pilot had given a call about the alarming situation. Reports claimed that the plane had no electrical power and was preparing for an emergency landing. Investigators from Brazil also joined Colombian counterparts into the probe. Bolivia and the United Kingdom also sent experts to help the probe. Meanwhile, in a gesture of sportsmanship and solidarity, Colombia's independent Santa Fe gave Chapecoense the 2015 trophy for the Copa Sudamericana, which the team won in 2015. Colombian team Atlético Nacional wants the current trophy to be given to Chapecoense in honor of the dead.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has announced to nominate retired Marine Corps General James Mattis to lead the Pentagon. Known as Mad Dog, Mattis is renowned for his some tough talk and battlefield experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. The announcement was made in Cincinnati as Trump started the USA Thank You Tour 2016 for his supporters. The choice of a seasoned military strategist would be another indication that Trump, a Republican, intends to steer U.S. foreign policy away from Democratic President Barack Obama's increased reliance on U.S. allies to fight Islamist militants and to help deter Russian and Chinese aggression in Europe and Asia. Nomination of Mattis will have to clear a bureaucratic hurdle. Because he retired only in 2013, Mattis would need the U.S. Congress to waive a requirement that a defense secretary be a civilian for at least 7 years before taking the top job at the Pentagon. His impressive combat record, however, may deter some Senate Democrats from trying to block his nomination. And the monumental task of recounting all 3 million of the ballots cast in the U.S. presidential election in Wisconsin is underway. Counting workers have to finish the recount by the deadline of 8 p.m. on December 12th. State election officials must certify the results no later than December 13 ahead of the Electoral College meeting on December 19th. The recount was demanded by former Green Party candidate Jill Stein. Although she demanded all the vote count by hand, a judge ruled that authorized local officials to decide how to carry out the task. Stein's campaign paid the state's $3.5 million filing fee for recount. Stein has also sought a recount in Pennsylvania, and her campaign said that she would file a similar request in Michigan. President-elect Donald Trump has said the recounting is not going to change anything. And staying with America, a tweet by President-elect Donald Trump has triggered a massive debate in the U.S. Trump has proposed jail for flag desecration and also suggested a loss of citizenship for flag burning. Although the outrage activists have slammed the suggestion, but different voices emerge in the Republican camp over this issue. White House, which is gearing for presidential transition in January, also trashed Trump's assertion, saying that America has a responsibility to protect rights enshrined in the Constitution.
A tweet by President-elect Donald Trump has triggered a fresh storm in the United States. As the Republican leader prepared to fill his team ahead of his inauguration in January, his suggestion to make American flag burning a punishable crime sparked a debate. Trump tweeted that nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail. The suggestion in contrary to the Supreme Court ruling that had said that desecration of American flag is a way of expression of speech and is protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, flag burning has been historically a contentious issue in America. Previous attempts of governments to make it a punishable offense were trashed by courts. American Supreme Court in 2 cases in 1989 and 1990 affirmed the right to desecrate the American flag as a form of free speech. Among the judges who voted to establish flag burning as constitutionally protected speech was late Justice Antonin Scalia, for whom Trump has regularly expressed admiration. The president-elect's proposal has been condemned on one more ground. There is already a Supreme Court ruling that restricts the government to take away an individual's citizenship involuntarily. The ruling came in a case that dates back to 1967. Many took to the social media to slam the suggestion by calling it unconstitutional and an attempt to curb the freedom of expression. Even within the Republican camp, there are voices who support flag burning. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said he supported the Supreme Court's decision. Another Republican from Wisconsin, Congressman Sean Duffy, also expressed his disagreement with Donald Trump. White House, which is gearing for presidential transition in January, also trashed Trump's assertion, saying America has a responsibility to protect rights enshrined in the Constitution.
the need to protect those rights is in place to protect speech and expression, not just when we agree with it, but also when we find it offensive. Many Americans, the vast majority of Americans, myself included, find the burning of the flag offensive. But we have a responsibility as a country to carefully protect our rights that are enshrined in the Constitution.
Despite wide differences on the issue, banning flag burning has drawn mainstream support in the past as well. The Flag Protection Act of 1989 was supported by the then President George H.W. Bush. The move was ruled unconstitutional. Another such failed attempt was in 2005 when the act was co-sponsored by the then Senator Hillary Clinton.
Well, cities across the world have moved a step forward in fighting the impact of climate change. Mayors of cities from around the world converged in New Mexico for the 6th biennial C40 summit to discuss ways and means to contain the effects of urbanization on change in climate. Now, 11 cities received award for tackling climate change, which also included Kolkata, Seoul and Paris.
As countries vow to fight human impact on climate change on a more local level, cities from across the world are also taking active steps to bring down pollution and carbon levels in their places. Mayors of cities from around the world gathered in New Mexico for the 6th biennial C40 summit to discuss ways to contain the effects of urbanization on change in climate. According to a UN report, cities contribute to about 70% of greenhouse gases.
Denial doesn't stop climate change accelerating, so it's even more important for cities to do their bit, and it's really important.
The cities have pledged to adopt climate-friendly policies and are also promoting finance for sustainable infrastructure. A major focus area identified and being implemented is solid waste management in the urban centers. Even as cities are fighting and striving to bring down carbon levels, 4 major cities in the world, Paris, Mexico City, Madrid and Athens, have pledged to stop using diesel vehicles by the middle of the next decade. The step is also being taken to improve air quality in these areas. In an attempt to inspire and encourage cities to adapt to more environment-friendly practices, the C40 Cities Awards were also given out to 11 of them. Kolkata, Addis Ababa, Copenhagen, Curitiba, Sydney and Melbourne, Paris, Portland, Seoul, Shenzhen and Yokohama were among those which have undertaken innovative and what is considered some of the best practices to actively combat climate change, all to make the world a better place for future generations.
In a development that critics warned risked Chinese wrath, US President-elect Donald Trump spoke by phone on Friday with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. The call, confirmed by Trump transition team, was the first such contact with Taiwan by President-elect or President since President Jimmy Carter adopted One China policy in 1979. The transition team later issued a statement saying that the two had noted that close economic, political and security ties exist between Taiwan and the United States. Regardless of the nature of the call, it's an act that bucks normal diplomatic protocol and is likely to infuriate China and complicate relationship further. Well, after a presidency marked by attacks on home soil, military intervention overseas, stubbornly high unemployment, France's most unpopular president in polling history says he will step down at the next elections. A move that has surprised few and not surprised many has cleared decks for an alternative left-wing candidate. Though recent poll surveys predict a runoff battle between the centre-right candidate Francois Fillon, who has already clinched Republican primaries, and the leader of the far-right National Front, Marine Le Pen.
The writing is on the wall. He has chosen to stay away from the polls this time. French President François Hollande has said he would not seek a second term in next year's presidential polls, a surprise move that clears the way for an alternative left-wing candidate. Meanwhile, Hollande's rival praised his brave decision not to run for second term, while former minister-turned-presidential hopeful Arnaud Montebourg has saluted the French president's decision not to seek re-election. Amidst it all, Parisians say they are not surprised.
I'm not surprised given what's happened over his term, all the reactions around him. I think it's the right decision for him. I voted for him.
While most of the people have hailed Hollande's decision not to contest the high decibel polls, French candidate for Left's presidential primary and former Minister of François Hollande, Arnaud Montebourg, had all the nice things to say about Hollande's decision, though calling his tenure controversy-laden.
By his own hand, he chose to end a term with a program and a track record which has been controversial and contested. He took a decision which was difficult and highly brave, which deserves the gratitude of people of the left.
And as the primary to pick a presidential candidate for a divided French left opened, the candidate for French left presidential primary, Arnaud Montebourg, called it a first step in the process of unifying the French left.
It's an important day because it's the first in the process of uniting all of the French lefts, which for now are divided, and I would like to unify all of them by using the primary as the #1 unifier.
All recent polls have predicted that neither Hollande nor any other socialist candidate would make it past the first round of the elections next spring. They predict a runoff battle between centre-right candidate François Hollande and leader of the far-right National Front, Marine Le Pen.
And from France, let's move on to Italy. Sunday will witness a constitutional referendum there wherein the voters will be given the power to choose on constitutional reforms proposed by Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. A win as proposed by Renzi would bring about changes in the system that would help end parliamentary deadlocks and boost the long stagnant economy. And a no from the voters will mean that the youngest Prime Minister of Italy would be forced to step down. Here's a detailed report.
Italians will vote on Sunday on a constitutional referendum. The voters are given the power to choose on constitutional reforms proposed by Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. A win, Renzi proposes, would bring about changes in the system that would help end parliamentary deadlocks and boost the long stagnant economy. A no from voters would mean that the youngest PM of Italy would be forced to resign, resulting in political instability in the country that would further impact financial markets. The referendum in Italy comes after the constitutional reform bill was not able to meet the required two-thirds majority in each House of Parliament. The public vote will be the third constitutional referendum in the history of the Italian Republic. If the voters approve the bill, then it would become the most extensive constitutional reform in Italy since the end of the monarchy. The reform aims to change the current parliament system in the country known as perfect bicameralism. In this system, both the chambers of parliament, deputies and the Senate, which consist of directly elected lawmakers, will have to agree on a bill to make it a law. This, according to the Yes camp, delays the legislation process. According to Renzi's proposed reforms, the Senate will become less powerful as the number of senators will be cut from 315 to 100, and the remaining senators would no longer be elected directly but by regional assemblies. The power of the Senate to hold votes of no confidence in government will be taken away. The Yes camp says that apart from speeding up the lawmaking process, the cost of politics will also come down, while the No camp insists the reforms would give more power to the government, thereby putting the voice of the people at risk.
We think
that the structural reform is what this country needs, and the Italians will decide if they agree or not on the simplification of institutions that we have proposed. We are very concerned that if the yes vote wins, the level of corruption will increase. We will have a Senate which the Italian people will no longer be able to elect, who will be provided parliamentary immunity, which will also safeguard them against the malpractices of the past years of governance by the local authorities.
In Western countries this year, a strong anti-establishment wave is evident, as in Brexit and Donald Trump's win in the US. On the same sentiment, the opinion polls on Italian referendum 2 show a lead for the No camp. The populist party, Five-Star Movement, who have made major inroads in Italy's politics recently, are strong supporters of the no vote. A no vote win is most likely to give them more power in the government.
This means that if the no wins, this is going to be a victory of the Five-Star Movement and to a lesser extent of the League. The anti-establishment, Eurosceptical or anti-European forces will certainly be the major beneficiaries of a no victory.
European Union too will wait with bated breath as the referendum approaches. Impact on banks, financial institutions, euro and a wider sense of the union itself, which is already facing challenges due to Brexit and migration influx. That would further be shaken by the anti-establishment sentiment. Though Italy's referendum seems to be one that will create a huge national impact, the era of globalization has ensured that there will be widespread consequences.
And here's a look at some more stories making headlines across the globe on World Connect. India's ancient practice of yoga features prominently in the UNESCO's Intangible Heritage List. Among the UNESCO list was China's tradition of dividing sun's annular circular motion into 24 segments, dating back to the 3rd century BC. And from the other end of the world, Cuba's dancing tradition also finds its place in the list.
A number of unique global traditions featured in UNESCO's Intangible Heritage Representative List, which was out this week. India's ancient practice of yoga featured on it. The practice, which consists of a series of poses, meditation and controlled breathing techniques, promotes a healthy lifestyle. Yoga also helps improve mental, spiritual and physical well-being. The age-old practice, taken up by all generations and age groups, has gained enormous popularity across the world. Among the UNESCO's list was China's tradition of dividing the sun's annual circular motion into 24 segments. Dating back to the 3rd century BC, the custom originated in the Yellow River and was developed through observations of seasonal changes, astronomy and other natural phenomena. The calendar moves in cycles from the beginning of spring until the greater cold. This is important for farmers as they plan their plantation cycles with it. From the other end of the world, Cuba's dancing tradition figures on the list. The Cuban rumba delights all with its lively steps, chants and gestures, hand clapping and dance with percussion instruments or kitchen utensils. The New Year festivities of Nowruz are also featured. The cross-country celebrations are held usually in Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, India, Iran, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Turkey, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. The celebrations with street performances, traditional sports and rituals involve fire and water usually take place for around 2 weeks. The list of intangible cultural heritage items was formed in 2008. The UN had made this list to highlight traditional events, rituals and social practices passed down through generations, giving those involved a sense of identity. Black pottery making in Portugal, a tradition that has been passed on almost exclusively through kinship ties, figures in the list. The tradition's future is under threat due to a diminishing number of people who are interested in it. Younger generations are losing interest, and industrially made alternatives are bringing down the market for the traditional style. In Uganda, the Madi Bowl lyre music and dance features on the list. This musical tradition is one of the oldest cultural practices of the country and has been passed on by the Madi community's ancestors for decades. The instruments are made with a turtle shell laced to a non-sonorous animal skin. The strings are made of fiber or nylon. They are then tied to a piece of wood inserted in the sound bowl. While new generations look at this music as old-fashioned, materials for making them have become rare, leading to a risk in the practice becoming a soon forgotten one. Ukraine's Cossack song traditions and stories of war, the singing tradition passed on from one generation to the next, is in need of safeguarding, as its bearers are an aging population. Very few in the younger generations are trained in these traditional tunes.
And with this, we come to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send us your feedbacks as always. You can write to us on our email ID, that is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page and tweet to us at World Connect DD. And before we leave, here's a glimpse of the Tivoli Ballet in Copenhagen, the Nutcracker, for which Denmark's Queen Margaret has designed the set as well as costumes. Enjoy these wonderful visuals, and thank you very much for tuning in. From me and my entire team of World Connect, we'll be back next week with more. As of now, namaskar.